what you were saying a little while ago about how these systems are designed to, even when something like this is uncovered, right, to be minimalized, covered up, buried in bureaucracy. It makes me think about what happened recently here in Georgia. There was an ICE detention center, Irwin, where women were being held, many of them after they had already done long terms in prison. So like we knew people that were there after they made parole and then they were just being waited to be deported. And there was it was uncovered by the women who were, telling this while they were there, that they were being subjected to forced medical procedures at this facility. But in all of the news reports, it was always like, but is that actually what's happening? Like, if there's a question there, if I'm hearing about it on the news, clearly some fuck shit is happening, But I think that this epistemic injustice that you guys talk about throughout this book just shows like this is by design. This is working as designed, that this can happen throughout centuries over and over again, and for us to never believe women who are saying that this is happening. I'm just curious how learning all of this while you were still incarcerated at this facility, how did you manage to absorb this information and work with it every day? I imagine from my experience with being able to be in community with other formerly incarcerated women and currently incarcerated women doing really heavy stuff, I just know that you guys must have been supporting each other, and I just want to hear about that part a little bit.
Yeah, I think the class group medical discussions were one of the ways in which we could pour out our frustration about some of the things that we were learning, and express how fucked up the situation was. I think also for Anna and I, we felt like we needed to funnel this into an artistic venue, right? Because we're both theater heads, we both have artistic backgrounds. What we were learning was heavy. It was disrespectful. It was violation. It was sex and gendered violence on steroids. We did prove that just because women are running a prison, it's no better than if there was a man running a prison, because violence is constitutive of all prisons. There is no prison that could work without violence. And we proved that with the research that we did. But now you got all this knowledge working in your body. What do you do with it? As artists, we decided to funnel that into a literary piece, and so an excerpt of our play, The Duchess of Stringtown, is there as a way in which to not only shape the history for people who are not book readers or not academics, but still can engage with the truth that we were sharing, so that more people could engage with it. But it was also a catharsis for us to kind of pour these horrible stories into a play where you can see these people come to life and this history come to life before you, through dialogue, through setting, through drama, through action, and through comedy. We needed to work this out of ourselves, and we started by reading Greek tragedies, because Greek comedies, because they have all of that, highs and lows, to get our juices going. And because we were no longer in the classroom per se, the folks who continued on with this project, there wasn't a place to really house us. So we were meeting here and there, here and there, and here and there. So the play was written on the rec yard, and the play was written during rec time, and in the gym, and here and there with some tables and paper and pen. I feel like it was a huge catharsis for me to put Sarah through the paces that she needed to be harmed because of what she did to those women and girls, to the ways in which she approved such sexualized violence under her authority as the benevolent prison reformer creating the first prison for women in the United States. She had a choice. She could have done something different. It was the first one in the whole entire country. And so I push against that idea that it had to be shaped like other prisons that men were running. They had to be in the same vein and look the same and act the same. Just putting a vase on a table with a flower, honey, does not fix your sex and gendered violence enacted upon the bodies of women and girls. And so the play was that for us. For me, it was like a way to go, and that helped me. And plus, me and Anna, we worked in the same department, in the mosquito net department. We made mosquito nets, and so we could chop it up and get it through our bodies by sharing time with each other.
And it was a way to show complexity of humanity in general. Because what the book shows, what the play shows, and what any logical thinking human being should know is no person is all good or all bad. We are complex creatures. We are a million shades of gray in the middle of that. So, we have these two huge figures in the play, The Duchess of Stringtown. The Duchess of Stringtown was Indianapolis's head madam at the time, a sex worker. And then we have Sarah Smith, the religious Quaker reformer. But what you see through these two women is essentially two sides of the same coin. Both of them think they're doing right and good and just things for women. And maybe they were on one hand, but then they weren't on the other. Likewise with the women that we bring life back to in the play and in the book as well. All of these women were complex. None of them were solely just criminals or deviants or sexual deviants. They were full, complex human beings as everyone is. Yes. And, so we're going through the gamut of emotions based on where we are in our own experience, plus the research and the shit we're uncovering, but just like everyone else, it's the whole gamut of everything. So, working through this together was very cathartic. We could be angry, we could be sad, but we could also be in joy, celebrating ourselves and these women and our experience. Of course, prison is horrific, okay? But there were beautiful moments. I mean, like it or love it, when you're there for decades, like Michelle and I were, this is your fucking life. Yeah. You have got to make the best of your life. So how do we make livability of life in this unlivable, inhumane place? And that was part of it. The joy of creating, the joy of art, and really art in a form that brought flesh and bones back to these people, but not just to bring it back to them, to give life to us as well. So I think it's supremely important that the very first place The Duchess of Stringtown was performed was inside IWP, performed by women who were incarcerated, because our stories are parallel.
Yeah. And we had the opportunity to perform it in front of the National Council for Public Historians, folks who are doing history on the fringe, not the academics, right? People who were doing history because it was just important to have this information in the world, and they're buffs, right? So they really took to it, and it was a very powerful moment. And we split Act 1 on one level and had everybody go upstairs. So we did it in church to Act 2, and the drama of moving through this place to put this together was hugely thrilling for someone who's been incarcerated 20 years, and having these other ladies read our play and talk about it amongst themselves and figure out what the character is really about and who they are, and ask us other questions about the history of these people, so they could put them alive and bring them alive in front of us on stage. It was powerfully cathartic.
And talk about subversive, talking about these early criminal women and sex workers, and we're doing the play in the prison chapel. I mean,
that was
the richness of that alone.
That was great.
I'm struck by a lot of so many things, but like the access that you guys had, right, to present from inside the prison, to symposiums, right, via the video conferencing before everybody was doing video conferencing, right? And even since then, like speaking at legislative hearings and things from inside the prison, it's pretty amazing, and it's something that like has inspired me to like figure out how the hell can we do that here. And I know you mentioned that like at the time you were doing this, the prison was more progressive, and so they were more they were signing off on things that were making you guys able
Well, they
to
didn't read.
Or,
Banked on the
Okay.
value of the fact that they were not people who read.
Yeah,
Flip through something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you can publish that. Thank you.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that was, you all were out by the time I was really going in, and the tenor of things had changed quite a bit, and so they were telling us, who were actively writing the book, that we couldn't publish a book and name the prison in it. And it's just like, well, the whole damn book's about the prison. So we really just had to get to a point where we just didn't use the word book, and everybody knew I was teaching a history class, but nobody was like, it's an art form to be able to be dumb looking and invisible, and I perfected that, and like, so nobody really messed with me, but I was also just kind of, I don't know.
I call that savvy.
Right. I mean, they say that you should be transparent about everything, but no, we wouldn't have gotten this, finish.
We wouldn't have gotten all of the
Yeah.
voices of the ladies
Yeah.
who are still behind the wall. So I don't know if you guys know that like half of the people in this book are still behind the wall.
Wow.
Right? So how do we make sure that their voices get in this book? She has to be savvy. She got to be smooth. She got to play the game. She's got to talk, she has to like not be too divulgent of what's happening, because their stories, their work, their research needed to be in this book.
Yeah.
And so you do make you make decisions on how on levels of transparency.
Well, and in the very beginning, again, we reflect back to the title of the book. Nobody expected us to be taken seriously. We were just going to be, ooh, look what our progressive prisoners are doing, and this is great. But nobody was actually supposed to believe anything we were talking about. We were just supposed to be the role models for how progressive education could be in the prison, and let's all pat the superintendent on the back. Good job, look what you're doing, and nobody else is doing it.
The dog and pony show.
Yeah. So, I think in the beginning, we were given all this access and doing all these things that had never been done out of a prison before, because that's all we were supposed to be, was another type of reality TV show to look how great the prison operates and this wonderful access and opportunity we're giving them. But it was never supposed to be any more than that.
I'd like to read a part from your afterword in the book, Elizabeth. It says, while we celebrate the triumph this book represents and the remarkable accomplishments of these scholars, we should remember that writing this book has not set its authors free from stigma, from surveillance, from difficulties accessing housing and employment, from intimate partner violence, from addiction, from post-traumatic prison disorder, from the heartbreak of being separated from and reunited or not with their children, and of course for those still inside, writing this book has not freed them from incarceration itself. Higher education in prison, uncoupled from the work of abolition, is a red herring. I'm going to skip a little bit. The prison did not grant these authors opportunities to pursue higher education after release. These are pathways the scholars and their allies carved out for themselves. Operating the Indiana Women's Prison History Project as part of the prison's higher education programming was an act of strategy, a shell game that involved certain risks. The writing of this book was at heart a clandestine and subversive operation. In the acts of researching, thinking, and writing, the authors claimed moments of fugitivity that are part of the long game of liberation.
Yeah.
This is a book that was created in a prison, but is not of it.
Yeah.
Amen.
Isn't that good? So good.